Game is, I mean, I think the one thing, and Nick can attest this far better than you and I can, but the confidence and like the emotional momentum that changes week to week. And after Michigan State lost to Northwestern, that's why I thought they had a pretty decent chance against Penn State, because when you're down and you get beat, the way that you put in your preparation the next 7 days is going to give you a chance to knock off an upset the week after that. And I know Penn State lost too, but Penn State was coming off of Michigan, Ohio State, now Michigan State.
And how many wins in a row did they have? The last time they tasted defeat was the bowl game, but they had gone on a run through the Big Ten. We hadn't seen since Michigan State and Ohio State had done it in the past couple of years.
And then there's just the absolute X factor is Mark D'Antonio.
Yes.
And I mean, you played for him, and I tell you what, as a Michigan grad and someone that covers more Michigan than Michigan State, but talking to a lot of Michigan fans don't like the guy, but they have mad respect for what he consistently does year after year, to the point where in the preseason, I had Mark D'Antonio still in my top 10 coaches in the country. I thought it was ridiculous that people were talking about moving on from him. Even Michigan State people were talking about moving on from him. And I had a lot of people calling up the show and saying, "You're crazy. He doesn't deserve to be up there," blah, 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 all that stuff. Right now, I have Michigan fans that were tweeting me yesterday and saying, he and Saban, those two might be the two best coaches in college football right now.
Well, that brings up the conversation, Coach of the Year candidate. I mean, you went from 3-9 last year. All of a sudden, you're looking at a one win away from potentially winning the East Division, which had 3 top 10 teams at some point in the season with Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. And to run that gauntlet and come out on the good side, I mean, Mark D'Antonio, to me, and Paul Chryst certainly has to get a little bit of his due, but he came in with a team that was already in place, all of his returners and all of the things. Michigan State, I remember sitting on this couch 12 weeks ago and being like, who is going to be anything for this team? And now we know the names.
Right. I mean, look at people don't give him as much credit as they should. And we went 3-9 last year. It was a season, but if you look at the score of any game that was out there, it could have gone one way or the other. I mean, for a 3-9 team to lose by 1 point against Ohio State, that says a lot when they win a college playoff system. So for a coach to be able to take his team, get them focused, be able to shift everything, get back to the way he had the foundation where he started prior to that year, and be able to have a team that's 7-2 going into this week. That says a lot. I mean, a lot of programs can be able to bounce back very quickly like he can. But he has the ability to what he did wrong, what can we change, what can we focus, and shift the tide back to get back on track.
I think Nick, I mean, what you just said is what probably is the most impressive thing about his coaching job this year is all offseason with the sexual assault scandal and dismissing a couple players and the racism, stuff like that was all going on. Everybody talked about, well, the culture that he spent 10 years building is just gone. And he's going to it's going to take him 2, 3, 4 years to get that culture back, that chip on the shoulder, the veterans leading the way. And here we were talking 9 games in the year, and he's got that culture back already.
Right.
I mean, that is
with guys that were still taking their first snaps of the season.
Yes.
In some positions yesterday. So
that goes to show you just how important. I mean, yes, it's great to have the senior leaders, but it really is about that coach at the top and how he runs his program to get that culture back. I think right now, I mean, he is the coach of the year in the Big Ten. Nationally, you got Kirby Smart at Georgia, what he's doing. You've got Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. And then D'Antonio's in that conversation. They beat Ohio State this week.
Well, you're taking a look at the schedule, remaining for Michigan State. I mean, this certainly sets up for them to potentially have that East crown and get them to the Big Ten championship game. They got at Ohio State, then they have home against Maryland, then they go on the road to Rutgers. I mean, you look at that now. To your point, Nick, my fear is that they go on the road and beat Ohio State, a team that's probably down a little bit because they know that their big dream of the college football playoff is now done. But I worry about them stubbing their toe against Maryland, maybe not Rutgers, because they're,
I don't know, Rutgers just beat Maryland.
That's true. So here you go. You look at that, I can't believe, honestly, guys, I can't believe we had a Big Ten championship with an asterisk next to it and potentially Michigan State in there. How impressive from the short turnaround in really 9-10 weeks has this been for this team?
I'm telling you, it's just I saw this coming. We've always had pride on being the team that wasn't really talked about, that the national spotlight wasn't on us, that we're the team in the shadows. Then before you know it, we strike and we're on top. So we always took pride in that. We let the nation talk about all these other teams, but we win and we had to do nothing but go up in rankings.
To that point, Michael, can you speak on that? Because it is true. You and I work in the business that we work in, and Michigan State's often overlooked by Michigan. Every year they're overlooked by Michigan, preseason as it goes. The past 10 years, the dominance that they've had, and not only that rivalry, but beating Ohio State consistently, giving it to Penn State when they need to win these games. When is it going to be time, if ever, that Michigan State starts to get maybe that type of credit? I
think honestly they started getting it a couple years ago when they were coming off of Big Ten titles. I thought it was incredible when I would go to the Big Ten coaches meetings in July and I would hear one of the Allen brothers still saying like, well, we're being disrespected, we're not being. I'm like, you guys just won the Big Ten title and you beat Baylor in the whatever the Cotton Bowl was. I'm like, I don't think people are disrespecting you right now. They're expecting big things from Michigan State. But I said, and I was talking about this in the offseason, that the moment that everything happened in Michigan State a year ago and they went 3-9, D'Antonio had been sitting there like eating a prime rib and going, this is perfect. I love this because this is what's me back to exactly where I want to be.
Yep.
I can tell my team, no one's respecting us. Chip on the shoulder. They're talking about Michigan. They're talking about Ohio State. They're talking about Penn State. We got to go out there and we got to earn every single thing. In some ways, and not to dismiss everything that happened in the offseason because we're not making light of that. Right. But in terms of his football team, it really played out for the way he likes to have it. And now you look at this game, and now they're going to be talking about Ohio State all this week, and they're not going to be talking about Michigan State. I think you're right, Justin. This gives them a great chance to go out there and beat the Buckeyes. But then, if they're the Big Ten East favorites, how does that impact them? And Nick, I mean, that's what you just kind of said, playing down to maybe some of those teams. I mean, if they can beat Ohio State this week, how does D'Antonio deal with that? All of a sudden the attention now comes to him. Now the respect is there, and he's got to get those guys ready for two games that everybody says they should win by they'll probably be favorites by
at least double digits.
At least double digits, probably closer to 18 points or more against Maryland and Rutgers.
Well, I'll say this. It's most likely this is probably going to happen if we do win, and I think we will. They're going to say, well, they beat a down Ohio State team. They beat it down at the Ohio State at their prime. They're kind of coming off a tough loss here in Iowa, so they're down their game. But they're still going to say, well, got to be careful because how Michigan State does it. And I hear the MO all the time is you beat all these good teams and all of a sudden you lose to a team that you shouldn't lose to. And I think that we just got to keep it, one game at a time and keep focus. We ignore all the spread. We ignore all that we should win by double digits. You got to go out there and play the game at the end of the day.
I think it'll be interesting to see how the very few seniors that Michigan State has, they're very impactful guys like Chris Fry. He's a guy that's going to keep that team relatively focused. Brian Allen on the offensive line. The leaders that they do have in the senior positions, they've been there before. Those are the guys that are still holdovers from that before. They're still there, and they'll potentially keep that focus.
I mean, I know you're going to talk about the wide receivers with that, but there's still so many young players on this team. The young players seem to have a little bit different mentality sometimes. They're still, I got to go out there and prove myself, Stu. Brian Lewerke still has to go out there and prove himself. Right. And so sometimes that can help you a little bit when you still have 2 games left. You're not getting too far ahead of yourself.
All right, we got to talk about Michigan. We'll do that right after this quick break. In the meantime, though, hop on Twitter. Use the hashtag 7Sportscave. Coming up after the break, we'll dive into Michigan. A nice, good, secure row the boat victory over the row the boat guy himself. So we'll get to that right after this. Stay tuned on the Suburban Ford 7 Sportscave.